For those of you out there doing a really good job of looking rich rather than actually being rich, let's talk about the 7 signs that you look rich, but you're quietly going broke behind the scenes. So let's go to point number 1. Your lifestyle is louder than your balance sheet. This is one that I'm actually personally pretty good at, where I go the opposite way. But if you're one of those people that has a fancy car in the driveway or a watch, I get commented about this watch all the time, which is actually an inherited watch. It was my dad's watch, but it's funny when I started wearing it, how many people said something to me about it. And maybe your wardrobe is over the top and you spend lots of money on clothes. Yet while you're outwardly showing people that you look rich, you financed everything. Or maybe you're not putting any money in a retirement account. Or maybe you're renting a sweet, awesome condo or house that really at the end of the day, you're paying way too much money for, that maybe you can't even afford to live in. So real wealth depends on doing all those smart things first and paying yourself first and saving and investing off the top and doing what I like to say, at least 15 or 20%. And if you're doing all those things, this is the conversation I have with my kids all the time. It's like, if you're doing all the smart things first, then don't hesitate to spend any money. Buy the new car, go on the vacation, go on the trip, do those things, but don't go into debt to do them. So if you've got the cash, so like I always use that $100,000 as the budget. If you're taking that $15,000 or $20,000 off the top and you're living on the $80,000 or $85,000, that's cool. Just don't go into debt past that. So you can spend what you have, make sure you have some reserves and some things on those lines, but just understand, you want to make sure that your balance sheet is not louder than your lifestyle, right? You don't want to overspend what you're doing and make yourself look one way when deep down inside, you know, if I lose this job or my revenue stop in a short amount of time, I'm going to have a major, major problem, okay? The second thing is this: almost nothing they enjoy is actually theirs. So what do I mean by that? Think about that for a second. Almost nothing they enjoy is actually theirs, right? So let's just say your home is over leveraged. I know I love living in my house, but maybe you've borrowed against it to do some of the things you're doing. Your car is leased or rented. Maybe the place you live in, you don't own. You're not even having a mortgage. You're renting that as well. Maybe you have payments for literally everything and all the things. Maybe you own a watch like this and you don't even own it. You're making payments on a watch. I mean, all these things I see where you can buy now, pay later. It makes it really easy for you to go out there and make your life look one way. But then when people call me and they sit in front of me and they are really a wreck because they don't want their family and their friends and people to know how bad their financial situation is, it's not as hard as you think to fix it. It's just going to take some time and energy and effort and discipline, which leads me right into the next point is your net worth is either trapped or imaginary. So let me say that again. Your net worth is either trapped or imaginary. Now, I have some different discussions with people about net worth. Because again, a lot of times, let's say you owned your home. I live in a house that's probably worth about $700,000. Let's say I own that home free and clear. Well, that's great. My net worth has $700,000, but it doesn't generate me any money. It doesn't generate me any revenue. So sometimes having $700,000, let's say I own two $350,000 rental houses, those things were both generating me $1,500 a month in positive cash flow. Now, same net worth, but I'm generating myself $3,000 a month in income. So you have to understand net worth to me sometimes is a little bit of an overrated number, but you got to think about these things and saying, do I own assets and things that are generating income and increased net worth for me? Or do I own things where my money's just sort of bogged down and tied up? And, we've talked about net worth many a times, and it's something that you want to make sure that you're starting to build up. But it's, to me, a lot better if you have assets that are generating revenues rather than just saying, hey, I own my home free and clear and I'm only putting money into retirement accounts, which you can't get to any of that money, which is half the point is you don't want to be able to get to that money because it's something you want to do way down in the future. But if you don't have any of this stuff, then you're going to be one of those people who, is quietly mortgaging your future and doing everything now. And it's one of those things where it's unfortunate where I see lots of people in their 60s, 70s, 80s that still have to go to work because they didn't do the smart things right now. Another thing where people have to understand where they're quietly going broke is this, is that some people have a big income with nothing behind it, meaning you've got this great income and that's all fine and dandy. That's allowing you to live this nicely inflated high-end lifestyle, but they're not saving, they're not investing, they're over leveraged, they're going into debts, and I call it they're living the show, right? Fancy cars, fancy clothes, fancy trips, fancy house, fancy fun, doing all the fun events and all those kind of things. But at the end of the day, their net worth is nothing, or maybe it's even way into the negative. They're living a lifestyle they really at the end of the day can't afford. And eventually that's going to catch up with you. And so I would rather be broke in my 20s and 30s than I would be broke well into the future. And so it's just something you have to be thinking about is, who are we trying to impress? Because most people are going to come in and out of your lives. They're not going to be there forever. And it's really more important to be able to, for me at least, buy your time freedom, right? That's what I'm looking to buy, is being able to have my time freedom. Then it makes all these financial choices and things that you have so much easier. So then maybe a lot of times being or looking broke, but actually being wealthy, it's kind of that book, The Millionaire Next Door. That's more the strategy that I go for. So just be really cautious and careful with that. So something else where people continue to stay broke is they always keep saying, if I make more money, right? So whenever you get a raise, say, I know lots of people, raise after raise after raise, increase in income, and quietly that money seems to disappear in advantage, right? I hear people all the time talking about, hey, as an income, as a family, we make $300,000 a year, but we're living paycheck to paycheck. And I keep thinking to myself, I realize the world's gotten more expensive, food, gas, homes, prices, depending on where you live, things have definitely got more expensive. But every time they get a raise, they just figure out a way to spend it or use up that funds. And so it's funny, I was just talking with my son who switched companies this year, started making more money. And the biggest thing we talked about is, lucky for him, if he puts 6% into his retirement accounts, the company will match him 6%. I said, if you just do that, own real estate, and then live within your means, long-term, you're going to be so good financially, it's not even funny. And those are not the things people want to hear because it almost sounds too simple, but I promise you, if he gets in the habit of just doing his retirement accounts, owning some real estate, eventually he wants to own his own business, and you start to then buy some more assets, house number one, house number two, maybe a condo, apartment buildings, multi-unit properties, putting more and more, not necessarily in your retirement accounts, but into non-retirement investments so you have some cash that you can get to when you want to do some other things. That's how you're going to win long-term at this game. So you just got to make sure that you use your raises smartly. And I always think, if you're a two-income family, and you can find a way to live on one person's income and save and invest and do all that stuff with the others, even better. I hear athletes who do this kind of thing where they say, hey, I live on my money that I made through doing ads or doing like non-income, like their paycheck. So it's all the stuff that they're doing on the side, their side hustles that they make, and they live on that money, and then they save and invest all that other money. So it's just something you have to kind of pay attention to. Another one is the spending. And we sort of talked about this already, but one of the ones I talked about is the spending is performed for an audience. Like, you care to be able to tell your friends, I have this fancy car, or I bought the country club membership, or we stayed at the Ritz-Carlton when we went on this trip somewhere. And the ones that are really doing those things, that are enjoying it with money that they can afford, I've got a friend who does these things. Good for him, because he's doing all the smart financial things first. And then he just goes and lives a lifestyle that he spent his whole life building up so that he can do those things. And so who cares what everybody else thinks? Spending should be done for yourselves, not as a performance for somebody else, right? It's something that you want to do for your own enjoyment. And the last thing that I want to talk about is this, and this is one where everybody gets themselves in trouble, is you never actually run the numbers for your own freedom. Like, I always tell people, what lifestyle do you want to live going forward? How much money are you going to need in your savings and investing to be able to generate the revenues you need without going to work to live the lifestyle you want to live? And again, I talk about my my mom and my stepmom all the time, whose lifestyles are completely different, whose one's net worth is quite substantially more than the other, but they're both, as someone in their 80s, living the lifestyle they want to live. One lives on a country club, lives a little more upgraded, fancy lifestyle. One lives in Las Vegas in a regular, traditional house, and does a lot more stuff with her synagogue and her friends, and plays games and plays bingo and does things that are a lot less expensive, doesn't travel. Neither one of them are traveling much now, but they used to. And so you just have to run those numbers. Now, this is no different than, any numbers that you're trying to run. It's trying to figure out, what do I need to do to get where I want to go? And yes, it takes some discipline. And yes, it's going to take some understanding of learning financial terms and learning how all this stuff works. But at the end of the day, would you rather be someone who's on the path to financial freedom? And yes, it might take a little longer, a little slower, and some sacrifices in your 20s and 30s, versus someone who is out there living a lifestyle they know that they can't afford, for whatever the emotional and mental reasons are, to try to show people that they have money, or that they're making money, or that they're basically spending every dime they have. And I realize there's a little bit of live for the now, not always for the future, because you never know how long you're going to be here. And so that's something I personally struggle with, is being able to enjoy and spend and do some of the things I want to do now, versus always worrying about doing it out into the future. So if you're someone who's really struggling with these things and trying to figure out, are you quietly going broke, or are you setting yourself up to get to that financial freedom number? And that's really what we're talking about today, is trying to figure out for you, how you can win at this game of money and finance. And it's not as hard as you think. So reach out with your questions. I'm happy to help. Hopefully you enjoyed this content, and, start subscribing to the channel, start liking the videos. There's lots of other good stuff that go into things a lot more specifically, but hopefully this will help you out. And just know, if you're starting to see these signs of going broke, I can help you fix some of these things, but you got to do the work. All I can do is point you down the path. You got to be able to do the work yourself. So hopefully that helps you out. Have an amazing day. We'll catch up to you and talk to you soon.